This is WFYI News Now. It's December 16th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, an Indianapolis woman is pardoned by President Joe Biden for a drug crime committed 2 decades ago. Washington Township Schools approve new rezoning in their district. And a recent state law prompted by a WFYI investigation now requires the Indiana Commission on Seclusion and Restraint to meet twice per year, but the group hasn't met in 14 months.
We need oversight. We need somebody to take responsibility for this important issue and care.
Those stories coming up, but first, President-elect Donald Trump praised Indiana schools as well-run in a recent interview with Time magazine. He also repeated his aim to close the U.S. Department of Education. Trump says Indiana schools could thrive with reduced federal oversight and potentially compete globally with countries known for strong education systems. But Trump has offered few specifics on how the federal department's key responsibilities would be handled if they were eliminated, like distributing funds to states for low-income students and those with disabilities. Last year, Indiana received $252 million for those students. Shutting down the Department of Education requires approval from Congress. President Joe Biden issued sweeping pardons last week to clear the records of more than 1,500 people. As WFYI's Jill Sheridan reports, one Indianapolis woman was pardoned for a drug crime committed 2 decades ago.
Emily Good Nelson was 19 when she was convicted of a nonviolent drug offense. After serving her time, Nelson finished school and started work in the healthcare field as a counselor and an advocate. She was one of President Biden's 39 pardons. Nearly 1,500 other people were given commutations. Pardons give complete forgiveness of a crime. Commutations lessen a penalty. In a statement, Indiana Congressman Andre Carson said when someone like Nelson is rehabilitated and paid their debt to society, they should get a second chance. He says he hopes more pardons are to come. Biden has said he will order more acts of clemency before he leaves office. I'm Jill Sheridan.
Washington Township Schools Board approved new rezoning in their district. From WFYI's Education Desk, Sydney Dauphiné has more on the adjustments that will affect 3 middle schools and 2 elementary schools.
At a meeting Wednesday night, the school board approved a proposal to balance enrollment in the elementary schools and the middle schools that unexpectedly grew this year with out-of-district transfers. Boundary lines for Willow Lake and Greenbrier elementary schools will be changed for next school year. The goal is to increase enrollment at Greenbrier, which is under capacity, and increase enrollment at Willow Lake. All Willow Lake students will feed into West Lane Middle School. Only 3% of Washington Township students will be affected by the changes, and many will have shorter bus routes. Families who are affected by these changes but are grandfathered in have until the end of January to decide if they want to stay at their current school. I'm Sydney Dauphiné.
And for our final story today, a recent state law prompted by a WFYI investigation now requires the Indiana Commission on Seclusion and Restraint to meet twice per year. The group is meant to protect the most vulnerable children in schools. But as WFYI's Lee Gaines reports, the group hasn't met in 14 months.
Kim Dodson, a member of the Commission on Seclusion and Restraint, says she reached out to the Indiana Department of Education earlier this year to ask when the commission would meet, but then didn't get a response. WFYI emailed IDOE to confirm the commission had not met this year. 2 hours later, Dodson received an email from the department asking to schedule a meeting in the final days of the year. Dodson says the commission is ignoring its responsibilities to keep kids safe in school.
There's truly no oversight, and there's no somebody seizing the reins to make sure our students are safe. So I think it just sends a message to schools that, we're too busy.
A spokesperson for IDOE says they were waiting until an annual report was complete to schedule the meeting. I'm Lee Gaines.
You can find the full story at WFYI.org. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.